can!
It's over!
He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net.
Nice one.
Straight down the middle. So a good.
Are you watching Firstpost with me, Rupha Ramani? Let's get started. Right, on the show today, the Indian cricket captain seems to be facing heat from all quarters. Now, while that comes with the territory, reports suggest his biggest annoyance has been the negative comments India's former captain and now commentator Sunil Gavaskar has been making. Rohit Sharma seems to have taken up the matter of his disgruntlement with the board. But was that necessary, and where will things stop? Novak Djokovic, meanwhile, has uploaded MRI scans of his injury. The same injury that Alcaraz mocked during the quarterfinal match. John McEnroe questioned, and the world has criticized him over. Is the injury fake? If so, where do you draw the line in questioning a legend? With Rafa Nadal's uncle now chiming in for the backlash. Have voices in the tennis world taken this a step too far? And India is gearing up to bid for the 2036 Olympics rights. They have the stiffest competition from two powerhouses that's trying to grow in the sporting world, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Can India fight these two off? What's the biggest challenge here, and where can India show its might? But first, let's take a look at the headlines in Sports 360. Starting with cricket, England registered a 26-run win over India in the third of the five-match T20 series. Bowling first, India's Varun Chakravarti picked up 5 wickets. Ben Duckett top scored with his 50. Chasing 172 to win, India stuttered to just about 145 for the loss of 9 wickets. The hosts still lead the series 2-1. Jasprit Bumrah has been crowned Cricketer of the Year. The pacer pipped Travis Head, Harry Brook and Joe Root to win the award. Bumrah is the 5th Indian player and the first Indian fast bowler to be recognised with the Garfield Sobers Award. Earlier, Bumrah was also named for the ICC as ICC Test Cricketer of the Year. In football, English club Manchester United have got the permission to build a 100,000 capacity stadium. The Ratcliffe-owned management is yet to make a decision on whether to build a new stadium or renovate the old Trafford. Jim Ratcliffe is keen on building a new $2.5 billion stadium in the adjacent site. In Formula One, Lewis Hamilton's acclimatization with Ferrari continues. The 7-time world champion completed test runs with a 2023 Ferrari on a Barcelona racetrack. Before this, Hamilton completed 30 laps at Ferrari's own track, Fiorano Circuit in Italy. Cricket's Mr. 360, AB de Villiers, will return to professional cricket. This comes 4 years after the 40-year-old batter retired from all forms of cricket. De Villiers will feature in the 2nd edition of the World Championship of Legends competition. The T20 League is scheduled to begin in July this year. And a spectator was killed after being struck by a hammer thrown by one of the participants during a youth track and field event in Colorado. The hammer in the hammer throw event cleared barriers before striking the man. The victim was later identified as the father of another of the participants. Trouble seems to be brewing again in Indian cricket. It's been a rocky 2025 already, and we can add this next episode onto the pile of all the things that have shaken Indian cricket. And this involves the skipper Rohit Sharma. The Indian captain is miffed with all that's happened over the last few months. Many things have provoked him. India's losses in the longest format should top that list. The internet being unkind, his very own lack of form, and yes, the critics who seem to be getting on his nerves the most. Of late, it's Sunil Gavaskar, his own statemate, and one who's actually always backed the Indian skipper. So what's the latest then that has stirred the pot? Rohit is reportedly annoyed with all that has been said by the former India captain and commentator, and it's quite difficult where to put the finger here. What exactly has aggravated the situation? But I thought it would be best to dive right into this and show you all the criticism that Sunil Gavaskar seems to have showered on the skipper, particularly over the last few months. Let's take a look at all of them. Of course, it all began when he missed that first test He called out the captain for it, saying this was not the kind of message that he had to send to his team. There's more, of course. He continues to lambast and lash out at Rohit. This was, of course, when he wasn't scoring the runs. If he doesn't score runs in Melbourne, he won't wait for the selectors to make that call. That's what he says, that he will drop himself, because he was quite unhappy with the way Rohit was performing. This was on his poor form. Age is catching up, he says. The mind is there. Everything the mind tells you, but the body just doesn't do it. Gavaskar, of course, going at it, continuing to criticize Rohit. This was on the Ranji Trophy failure. Rushes of blood cost some silly-looking dismissals. A couple of them, of course, in Gavaskar's opinion. And then this, which also included many other cricketers, whether their hearts were in it or they did that only to ensure they were not stripped of their BCCI contracts, is known only to them. Getting back to domestic cricket and, of course, pointing out to the lack of commitment. Gavaskar has, of course, been very harsh. Now, we know how Sunil Gavaskar is. Sunny G, as he's fondly called by everyone who works with him, doesn't mince his words. He calls it like he sees it. And rarely does he sit on the fence. He's never shied away from calling a spade like he did during the Australia series against India. He did not bite back or clamp down on his critique. He called Rohit out for the lack of runs and even said Rohit Sharma will be the first to say goodbye before he's asked to leave. Now, I see that as a compliment, quite frankly. He was only giving Rohit Sharma credit to have the foresight to say enough was enough when it came to his own cricket. That's something everyone really struggles with. But Gavaskar was equally harsh and caustic when he called every superstar to go back to domestic cricket. And we saw how that played out. Rohit Sharma, Yashasvi Jaiswal, Shreyas Iyer underperformed against Jammu and Kashmir, losing to them in what was a shocking collapse. It was, in fact, a rare misfortune for Shreyas Iyer, who's actually had a good run with the state side, but now the three of them will not be present in Mumbai's next Ranji game. It's a must-win. They will head to train for the ODI series against England instead. Rohit Sharma is livid with the kind of criticism that Gavaskar, among other commentators, have laid down on his performance. How have many of you viewed this particular episode, Rohit versus Gavaskar? A divided house, but a fair number supporting both the stars. Now, here's the thing. Being a captain of a cricket side is not easy, and being one leading the Indian team is certainly much harder. Rohit Sharma has seen so many ups and downs. He's seen the best and worst, so maybe he should ride the storm out instead of involving the board here, because he cannot stop tongues from wagging. No one really can. Yes, it's been a roller coaster ride that saw him reach the highs of World Cup glory to now his back to the wall. It isn't easy, this phase especially. But all he can do really is to focus on the job at hand, tackle the controllables, his form, his batting in particular, his team and the matches that are coming up. They're all going to be very, very critical. Paying heed to anything outside of this will just misfire. The Australian Open is over, but many just cannot seem to stop talking about it. The controversy surrounding Novak Djokovic's injury has dominated conversations, even 3 days after the slam got over. Djokovic was forced to retire from his semi-final match against Alexander Zverev due to injury. But incredibly, many do not seem to be buying it. The noise, in fact, was so loud that Djokovic resorted to uploading pictures of the scans of his thigh to make a point. The Serb put up the MRI scans showing his hamstring injury on his social media platform to subtly tell the world that he was indeed injured. But did he really have to do that? Have you seen any athlete, especially of his stature, have to do that with the intent of showing proof? Now, on normal days, the physical evidence would be enough to end all speculations. Even the judicial system believes so. A proof that too, a physical one, should have put a stop to any more talk regarding this. But in Djokovic's case, the scans were not enough and probably made things worse. The latest to join the din is tennis legend Rafael Nadal's uncle and coach Tony Nadal.
On several occasions, we have seen Novak with similar performances, using facial expressions and body language that contradict what we see on the court, raising doubts about the authenticity of his issues.
Now, Tony Nadal isn't the first person to question the authenticity of Djokovic's injury. Through the campaign, in fact, several allegations were laid against the Serb. It started during the quarter-final match against Carlos Alcaraz. Djokovic was slammed for taking a medical break after losing that first set. He was even mocked by Carlos Alcaraz himself, who copied the limp during the match for drama. Tennis great John McEnroe was harsh. He said Djokovic was faking his injury right there. But when Djokovic retired from the semi-final match, it did show that the Serb wasn't entirely 100% fit. But the Australian crowd didn't really buy into this. They booed Djokovic as he made his way out of the Rod Laver Arena.
Why there was such a protest in the stands? I understand that the public showed their disappointment and anger at being deprived of the spectacle they had been expecting after having paid for it. The second and perhaps most significant reason is that over the years there has been a growing suspicion around Novak due to his expressions or histrionics, casting doubt on the authenticity of his injuries.
What's horrible for the Serb and his fans is that the allegations are pouring in even after Djokovic uploaded those scans. Has that antagonized the public, made them feel he was overcompensating in some way? But didn't the public force his hand in the first place? Many feel it's sickening that Djokovic has to explain himself. Star former cricketer and commentator now, Kevin Peterson, and Djokovic's former coach Boris Becker came out in strong support of the former world number one. Now look, the person everyone is trying to corner and defame is no newbie. He's no fresh kid on the block. He's arguably one of the greatest to ever play the game. The one who has won most number of Grand Slam titles so far, and who's now pulled out of Serbia's first round qualifying Davis Cup tie against Denmark. The match, which will take place in the next 3 days. Reason given, Djokovic is still recovering. Now, nobody needs a reminder on just how much Djokovic cherishes playing for his flag, how much he loves Serbia. He's the same person who's moved to tears after he got a rousing reception from all of his fans in Serbia when he returned post that US Open triumph in 2023. He's the same person who, after years of dreaming, finally managed to clinch an Olympic gold for Serbia last year.
I think now, when I look back, the greatest achievement and greatest highlight of my career overall, winning the gold for Serbia.
99 major titles, which includes 24 Grand Slams, and yet the biggest prize of his career is that gold. So will the tennis world continue to accuse him of faking his injury? Will they still demean Djokovic by questioning his lack of commitment? Forget personal glory, for Serbia at least. It's been only half a year since Paris Olympics took place, but the focus has already shifted to future events. America is firefighting in every sense of the word as it gears up for the 2028 LA Games. Australia is building up to the 2032 edition of the tournament, and even with 2036 still 11 years away, major countries in the world are hopeful of securing the rights for the 2036 Games. The host for the 2036 edition of the Olympics is expected to be decided after this year, but the loudest interest is already coming in from India, who have some stiff competition. Now, they've time and again expressed their desire to host the 2036 edition, but will it be easy for the Asian nation to secure the rights? India's Prime Minister, though, is hopeful and doing everything he can to secure the rights for the big event.
साथियों, जैसे हमारे खिलाड़ी हमेशा बड़े लक्ष्य लेकर चलते हैं, वैसे ही हमारा देश भी बड़े संकल्प लेकर आगे बढ़ रहा है। आप सभी जानते हैं कि भारत 2036 ओलंपिक्स की मेजबानी के लिए पूरा जोर लगा रहा है। जब भारत में ओलंपिक होगा तो वो भारत के स्पोर्ट्स को एक नए आसमान पर ले जाएगा।
India's ambition isn't just being driven to boost the sporting endeavors in the country. The desire is influenced with the intent to give the country a major push through the games.
ओलंपिक सिर्फ एक खेल का आयोजन पर नहीं होता। दुनिया के जिन देशों में भी ओलंपिक होता है, वहां अनेक सेक्टर्स को गति मिलती है। ओलंपिक्स के लिए जो स्पोर्ट्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनता है, उससे भी रोजगार बनता है। भविष्य में खिलाड़ियों के लिए बेहतर सुविधाएं बनती हैं। जिस शहर में ओलंपिक्स होता है, वहां नया कनेक्टिविटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनता है। इससे कंस्ट्रक्शन से जुड़ी इंडस्ट्री को बल मिलता है, ट्रांसपोर्ट से जुड़ा सेक्टर आगे बढ़ता है और सबसे बड़ा फायदा तो देश के टूरिज्म को मिलता है। अनेकों नए होटल बनते हैं। दुनिया भर से लोग ओलंपिक्स में हिस्सा लेने और गेम्स देखने आते हैं। इसका पूरे देश को फायदा होता है।
The International Olympic Committee modified the Olympic Charter to make it more cost efficient, changing its mandate of hosting the Games in just one city to multiple cities, something the Indian government can capitalize on. India has proposed to keep Ahmedabad as the main city that will host most of the games. That's aquatics, athletics, basketball, shooting, tennis, volleyball, and of course, it will also host the main Olympic village. Bhubaneswar will have field hockey. A city like Bhopal will have rowing, Mumbai will host cricket, and Pune will host canoeing. This is the plan that India has if they do end up winning the bid for the 2036 Games. And while this does fall in line with IOC's latest amendment of being cost-effective and spreading the Games across various cities and helping boost tourism for the host country, it comes with its own set of challenges. What about travel and logistics, not just for the athletes, but the many fans who will be coming to catch various sporting events? A multi-city games acts as hindrance in this regard, and this is where India will face tough competition from the rest of the bidders. The list of all the potential bidders for the 2036 edition are Indonesia, Turkey, Chile, South Korea, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, all proposing just one main city for the entire Games. So under these circumstances, what would the IOC be forced to choose? The country that has enough infrastructure to host the Games in one single city, or a country that will host it across multiple cities? And it isn't just the multi-city proposal where India will have some resistance. Hosting an Olympics requires massive infrastructure and goes without saying, massively deep pockets. Hosting an Olympic event cost Paris about $9 billion, Tokyo $13 and Rio an insane $20 billion purse. This is where nations like Qatar and Saudi Arabia will give India some stiff competition. The oil-rich nations are doing everything they possibly can to become sporting powerhouses of the world. And they're doing it by gathering as much experience as they can through various tournaments and events. Let's look at Qatar first. The country has already hosted major events like the Asian Games in 2006 and the World Cup many years later in 2022, has the experience of hosting Asia Cup, the World Aquatics Championship, and is set to host the Basketball World Cup in 2027, along with the Asian Games in 2030. Even in the Olympics, they bid for the 2016 Games and the 2020 Games, but of course weren't shortlisted. So for 2036, the country will come out in full force. Now let's take a look at Saudi Arabia. The fierce neighbor is making a beeline for this as well. Saudi is equally trying to stamp its authority as the sporting hub of the Middle East and the world. The nation is eyeing major events to solidify their candidature. They will host the 2025 Olympic Esports Games. That's a major one. They are the confirmed hosts for the FIFA World Cup in 2034, and the same year will host the Asian Games as well. Big events lined up back to back to show their clout. So clearly, they will already have the infrastructure to prove their might here too. And with the money they are splurging, they will be willing to go all the way to host an Olympics. So India will face a major challenge from these two nations when it comes to getting that hosting rights. India maintains cordial relations with both these countries, but when it comes to Olympics, it will be an all-out war. The question, though, is what parameters will IOC look at and what they will prioritize for giving the final verdict. Time for last serve. Lionel Messi fever grips Peru. Hundreds of fans gathered around Messi in Peru's capital Lima when he arrived with the Inter Miami team for a friendly with local club Universitario. Take a look.
Messi! 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 Messi!
That wraps it up here on Firstpost. I'll of course see you again same time tomorrow. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we put together for you. Touted as the minimum defense from that video. India's neighbors were the first to send the special edition of Vantage live from the White House throughout this week. Yes, Hindu Mandir we're on our way to Tel Aviv. Pretty measure, but it's also the perfect way to drive.
I don't think that
Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sherin Tagwe. Welcome to
60% of the world's
office. Prime Minister Modi. Divyang.
we were actually
How are you doing? How do you like? It's been 1 year since that meeting. Iron bars separate you from the outside. Out the vote effort. Trump had, it says, and at $4.3 trillion. 300 billion by 2030. That's what we need to tackle climate change.